Hello, and welcome to The Season, the podcast from FYCit that goes behind the scenes of awards season. I'm your host, Ryland Aldrich, creator of the FYCit app. We are back after a nice couple weeks break and have a fascinating conversation for you today with Volker Bertelmann, the Oscar-nominated composer of Conclave. Volker won the Oscar for his previous collaboration with Edward Berger, All Quiet on the Western Front. We talk about both those films, as well as his reflections on awards season dating back to his first nomination on the film Lion. Please stick around for that. Award shows are really kicking off in earnest this weekend. The CDG Awards are Thursday the 6th, the day this episode drops. The postponed Critics' Choice Awards will happen Friday the 7th. Saturday brings the PGA Awards and the DGA Awards, along with ASIFA's Annie Awards for animation. Next week, we'll get the VES Awards Gala on Tuesday the 11th. Wednesday, February 12th is the Casting Society's Artios Awards, and our friends at Gallica will announce their Dorian Awards next Thursday the 13th. As every listener to the season probably knows, the Oscar nominations have been announced and Phase 2 screenings are up and running again. The film that has had the most post-nom screenings added so far is Amazon MGM's Best Picture nominee Nickel Boys with 21. Focus's nominee Conclave is just behind on 17. Meanwhile, Warner's Dune Part 2, Universal's Wicked, and Searchlight's A Complete Unknown and A Real Pain are all in double digits as well. As always, you can find all these screenings and more on the FYCit app. If you know an awards voter that isn't yet using FYCit, head over to FYCit.app to download the app for free and stay on top of all the latest FYC screenings. Now let's get to my conversation with composer Volker Bertelmann. Today I'm joined by Volker Bertelmann, the Oscar-winning composer behind All Quiet on the Western Front and current Oscar nominee with his score for Edward Berger's Conclave. Volker is known for his bold, experimental style, infusing unexpected sounds and instruments into tension-packed scores. Conclave is his fifth collaboration with Berger, and in addition to the Oscar nom, the film has also earned BAFTA, Golden Globe, and Critics' Choice nominations, amongst others. With his ability to bring the inner psychology of characters to the forefront, whether on the battlefield or in the cloistered halls of the Vatican, there's nobody better to talk to about how music can elevate a film and win over the awards community. So Volker, how's your season?
Well, exciting. I mean, I'm traveling a lot and, obviously I'm very, very honored and feeling very honored about all these acknowledgement from all the communities. That's wonderful.
Yeah, congratulations on the Oscar nomination. It's, of course, an incredible honor to be nominated for an Oscar, but you're also coming into the season having won an Oscar in 2023. How is it different this time around?
Well, it's, I have already won one. That is the difference. And, you experience once, or actually I experienced twice, the whole Oscar ceremony. And the first one was I was so nervous and I was really not prepared for it. And in a way you can't be prepared anyways, because you're always excited and but since last time I feel a little bit more relaxed in terms of knowing what will come in the next couple of weeks, and that makes it different.
Yeah, I want to get into your past experience with the film Lion and others, but before that, let's talk a little bit about Conclave. That's your fifth film with Edward Berger. After getting so much recognition with All Quiet, did you feel heightened expectations to continue that success?
Well, the art form of not getting expectations or not having expectations is maybe one of the biggest challenge in an artistic career in a way. And I learned that already from my albums as Hauschka. The second album is the most difficult because the first one was maybe a success. And then the second one is like you have to get, invent yourself fresh. And I think that's the same with scores in a way. Every time you have to invent yourself new. And I'm quite a searcher rather than somebody who wants to repeat himself all the time. And so, I would say I'm trying to disconnect me from the expectations as much as I can. I think I'm old enough to do that.
Can you take us inside your relationship with Edward a little bit? What's it about that partnership that leads to so much acclaim?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's a wonderful human being. I mean, very gentle. The collaboration with him is in a way something where he's always supporting the positive aspects first. He's mentioning what is strong rather than, saying, I don't like that. I don't like that. Come back to me whenever you have something new. He's much more a person that says, I really like that. That is resonating. And that makes it so much easier to actually connect to certain things and develop them into something where not only me is satisfied, but also that he is satisfied as well. In a way, one of the biggest parts of a film composer is to collect all the information and all the opinions about the film, and then you have to find a solution for that. So in a way, it was wonderful with him. And the second thing is that comes back to your previous question. I always have the feeling we start from scratch, not in the sense that we start the discussions over and over again. It's much more building on the things that are working anyways. But we try to not repeat ourselves in terms of, we can do that exactly like the second film that we did together.
When does the process start with Edward? Are you talking about it before production, during production?
It depends a little bit on the project. Well, with Conclave, I was searching for a religious instrument in a way, or an instrument that reflects somehow the Vatican as an architecture or as a space where maybe there's an idealistic religious idea existing. So that was already happening before I saw the first cut. I was researching a little bit more. And then once I saw the film in the first cut, that was very important for me because I realized then what kind of tempo it has, what pacing, what the color is. And obviously this one was very red and there was a lot of big spaces. And, I had to find something musically that somehow describes the richness also of that religion. That was in a way my beginning. At the moment, for example, I work on a new film with Edward and I had to compose already pieces for the shoot. So every film is different.
Yeah. Conclave is, obviously takes place inside the Vatican's secret papal election, but it's not filled with traditional church music. I read you decided to feature the crystal bachette, the rare 1950s instrument that you play with wet hands. Is that what you were talking about there? Can you tell us a little bit about this and just the particulars of the Conclave score itself?
Yeah, well, I was playing maybe 10 years ago a concert at the Barbican, and there was a guy who played, glass harp. Thomas Bloch is his name. But he also played this weird instrument that I saw there. And I remembered when I was searching for an instrument that should replace a choir or an organ in a way, to have a kind of religious aspect in the film. I was remembering that maybe glass harp would be a great instrument, but the glass harp I tried it and it was a little bit too pristine in a way. I needed something dirtier. And so I remembered the crystal bachet, and so I invited the crystal bachet player from Paris, Marc Chouerin, and he came to my studio and he was playing a couple of pieces that I wrote for him, and that instrument was fantastic. You had you put your fingers in water and then you rub these glass rods, and the glass rods are connected to like nearly cymbal kind of cylinders that are, distorting the sound of the glass rods to a kind of nearly synthesizer-like sound. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is totally otherworldly, and that has a kind of purity. And so when I sent that to Edward and I said, what do you think? That I think this instrument sounds like a perfect match for, some like religious instrument replacement. And he said, I really love it. I don't know yet where we want to put it because it was not connected with the scene. But then the more the cut was, crystallizing itself, then the more I could see that he was using the theme always in religious areas when there were prayers or, longer thoughts about doubt and belief. And then suddenly it settled in as a religious theme.
So from your perspective, do awards voters tend to notice these sort of bold experimental choices, or do you think they're just responding to the overall emotional impact of a score, regardless of the particulars of how it's created?
I would say it's the amount of everything. Every hour you spend in thinking about your work and you invest in research and you are carefully working and you are really trying to get the best out of you. I think these are all investments that are worth doing because people sense the amount of hours that you put in something. No matter if it's music or if it's, building a house, or you feel actually the investment. But at the same time, I would say the collaboration with Edward is going so well in terms of picture and music are marrying so well with each other that I think maybe, it's beyond just making music. It's much more like finding the right space, creating music that is not burying any acting. It's actually more helping to find maybe like an information that you can't express with any other source. So I think working with Edward, he gives me also space for loud pieces of music, but then there is also areas where I'm just doing like one note, like erp or boop or whatever, just to help a little bit the atmosphere. And I think that is something that is not so often happening. A lot of times you're doing quite traditional way of writing music to a film, which I also appreciate sometimes. But in this case with Edward, it's always different. And I think that is maybe resonating with a lot of people.
Right. We talk to a lot of artisans and artists who no one likes to say that they're thinking about awards during the production process. But does it ever cross your mind, boy, I'm going to have to be on a podcast or on a panel explaining this process to a group of people, down the road when you're in the middle of creation?
No, what I would say what I like, and that it was also when I did my records, I really think it's nice when you have stories at hand where you describe your process or where you describe why you are actually choosing a certain instrument. Because I think when I'm looking at something in the internet or I'm informing myself, I want to learn and I have questions. And so when somebody explains me those questions, it's like a good book. And so I think I was always interested in, creating a kind of world around my process just to make sure that this is coming across when the film is promoted. And it was not so much for thinking about awards in the first place, because the awards just come in place when you have the first premiere. Let's say in Toronto, and there is the recognition of your work is suddenly, there's some buzz starting. I think then you realize, okay, I should prepare that there might be time, that you need time for, doing Q&As and, traveling. But I think it's always good to have the material at hand, because you can't get it when you haven't filmed any, making offs and sometimes I'm just figuring out, I just forgot to make pictures. And that makes it sometimes a little bit sad, because I was so in the moment, and then I went home and I'm like, I should have made some pictures of that instrument so. But I'm human, so, things are happening.
Do you enjoy campaigning for awards? Do you do a lot of Q&As and composer panels?
Yeah, I enjoy every minute, because it's a little bit like going on tour with your record. When you have a film and it is just plays one weekend in the cinema and then it's over, you can't tell somebody, why don't you go into the cinema or watch the movie? It's great, or something like that. When a film has success and you can travel the world and you can see, meet people who are reacting straight away towards the film. You have incredible conversations. Obviously, there's also a very tiring element of it. And you can also have conversations that are maybe not so pleasant. But in general, I would say it's so wonderful that you meet so many different people, and who are interested in what you are doing. And as a musician, you also, you can talk about the process, which is a little bit like also a very separated process, because you go to the studio, you work with big orchestras, you have a whole own process that you can talk about. It's wonderful to accompany a film like that.
Yeah, a lot of people who go out on the season tour with a contender tend to see the same people at the same events and be on the same panels. You hear about that with actors and directors a lot. Is that way with composers as well? Are you seeing the same group of composers and get to form a little bit of a bond doing events together?
Yeah. I mean, what is really nice is that you obviously meet very interesting, colleagues, also colleagues that you always admired. And you would never meet them if you're not nominated. I always say, nomination is actually the win, because you have the privilege to travel to all these events where you can have dinner in a small setting, but you can also meet them in different celebrations where you always run into each other. And I think what is important is to acknowledge the other's work and to connect. I always walk towards them and say, hey, how are you doing? How was how were the last couple of weeks? And we enjoy a lot of times sitting somehow in the same ship and, and meeting again.
Yeah, there's quite a few touring musicians turned composers. Obviously, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross comes to mind. Do you have a little bit more of a bond with the people who have gone through the music industry side of things before turning to film composing?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a part of the touring that makes you maybe a little bit more disconnected every now and then from the film business, but that is not a part of the musician that connects me more with a musician. I think it's much more the personality and the openness. And, sometimes it needs also a few years to talk with each other. Sometimes it doesn't work. It's really a question of being open and interested. And I don't know if you have that. Sometimes you sit sometimes on a table and nobody asks you a question. But you are always the one that asks questions. So what I think is important that you actually, when you want to have conversations with others, you actually have to inform yourself what they are doing, where they are at, where they live. And slowly over, let's say, one season or let's say 2 or 3, you slowly meet people. And I think you always run into each other also under other circumstances, which is wonderful.
So before Conclave and All Quiet, you burst onto the award scene with Lion in 2016. Mm-hmm. That was your first Oscar nomination. Do you remember how you found out you were nominated for the Oscar that year?
Oh, yeah. I was in Los Angeles with my friend Dustin O'Halloran. I was in his studio, and it was my 4th film ever. And I was completely out of my head. I mean, I was already at that time 51. I was already an old hack, I would say, in terms of music. And, as a musician, you are normally at that age, there's no perspective for you, but I heard that it was a little bit surreal. But what was so nice was that I could share that with a very good friend who also, was born in Los Angeles and who was really familiar with the whole city and with everything. And I learned from him so much. And I could somehow, travel with him he was much more confident and, he knew so much more. And I mean, we went to every event. I mean, we just said, let's do everything. And afterwards we can decide when it's coming to another time, we can decide what we are not doing anymore again, and that was very wise because now I know whenever there's a certain event happening, I'm like, I don't know maybe that's so helpful. And, that one is maybe better.
Yeah. So were there things that you really wish you knew about award season on that first roller coaster?
Yeah, what would have been nice would have been that I knew how stressful it is in the length of it, that you start somehow in, let's say, October, and how you feel at the end of March or in the middle of March. I didn't know. I was just full steam, all the time. And then suddenly at the end of March, I recognized that you can't do that every year. You have to somehow, concentrate on the things that in a way also why you are there, because then you are very awake and you take something with you from those situations. And when you do it the first time, also what I learned is prepare your speech,
Take us back to that night. So you're going into the Oscars for your first ever Oscars. Did you walk in feeling like you had a chance to win? You said you did not prepare a speech. Is that right?
No, I didn't prepare a speech. I was sitting next to my wife and we dressed up the first time. And I think it was maybe already in the Dolby Theater, but we were sitting right in the center where there was the mixing desk. We were quite sitting close to that. And my wife had high heels on, and suddenly just before our category was announced, her shoe was falling down into the dungeons of the of the hall. So she went in a way without her shoes to the place where we were waiting for the announcement. And in a way it was so human, but it was also, I mean, we didn't know that it's so cold in there. You know, we're not used to ACs. So we were too thinly dressed, and also we hadn't eaten anything. So just to give you a few things, what we learn is we eat as much as we can, and we dress warm enough to just not be nervous, and then, you know, being totally shivering, and then you go on stage and you mumble something, you know, that everybody is recording. I learned from that a lot, and just said to myself, I'm not a person that goes to the microphone, and I can maybe freely talk, but I want to also to make it a moment where I feel like I'm feeling safe.
So fast forwarding 6 years, you're back in the Dolby, nominated for All Quiet on the Western Front. Some people had that at the top of their list. Did you feel that sort of favorite status going into that night?
Well, I was definitely feeling that there's a chance that somebody will call my name, which is this year the same. Mm-hmm. Because the only thing you have to do is you have to be prepared for that moment. Everything else, you are as normal as you are. I remember that I, in a way, not spaced out, but it was in a way, my name was called, and I was somehow kind of on autopilot, walking up the stairs, looking at the, standing at the mic, looking at the people, trying to say to myself, this is like a concert. Just do an announcement like, hey, how are you? I'm good. Thank you for this, for the honor, and just being as natural as possible. And I would say once I started, I could feel that I will come to a proper end and that I'm not passing out.
So I have to ask, have you started writing potential speech or anything for this year, just in case you're lucky enough to hear your name again?
Yeah, I haven't written it. I just practice. I practice every now and then. Out of the blue, I say to myself, say the speech. Because what is also a stressful component in that thing is actually the time. Because if you want to thank a certain amount of people, you have to structurally somehow connect sentences with each other. Because otherwise you say, to two people, thank you. And I'm not a person that is allowed to not take 45 seconds to take 2.5 minutes.
Right.
That's for the composer, I would say that's not a good thing to calculate in. So I rather say to myself, practice the 45, think about the people you want to acknowledge and thank, and be yourself as much as you can.
So you mentioned earlier that it is a real win just to be nominated because you get to go out and continue to talk to people and have those experiences. But having been both nominated and having won, I would imagine the rest of Oscar night is maybe a little bit more fun when you win.
It's a total different thing. I mean, because after that, you're living an own life in a way for the whole evening. And obviously your people that are following the ceremony on the television, you are not aware how many people are watching this. And suddenly when you come home, you suddenly realize, okay, I know now who watched it all. And that makes the whole difference. When you're nominated, obviously people are watching it as well, but after you're not in, somehow it trickles out somehow. And, which is also, in a way something that you obviously have to calculate in as well. Because from 5, one person is having that feeling and the others are, I'm really trying not to use the word win, because my feeling is really that we're all in a way winning by just being nominated already. We get carried by a lot of people. You get a lot of requests, even though you have the quality already before you were nominated. Suddenly that is established in something, which is also a little weird, because obviously I was able to write a good score already before 2017, but now it's in a way, there is a legit, like a stamp.
You've recently served as composer on a couple hit TV shows as well, Day of the Jackal and Dune Prophecy. Is there a difference composing for television or for series as compared to film?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much more work.
Right.
Well, it's the amount of music that you have to compose is tremendously big. Like, let's say for Day of the Jackal, it's nearly, let's say, 7 hours, 8 hours of music, which is in a way 4 films. The communication is so much more because you have so much more teams that are working on a series. At the same time, what is nice is the concept of using themes, and you make in a way versions of the themes, and that makes it easier in a way because you have once you found the language, you can somehow create the music from, let's say, the first of 3 or 4 episodes, which is really nice. But in general, if you have too many series in a year, it occupies you in a big way. Last year, it was quite a lot that I did in terms of music, but at the same time, it practices everything. After a series, let's say a cinema film appears like something that you always can do, you know?
So Emmy season is just around the corner. It seems like both of these shows are in the conversation already. Are you worried about losing time in the studio and becoming a year-round awards campaigner?
Well, first of all, I'm not afraid of that, but at the same time, which in a way goes in the same direction as my experience on the first Oscars, you really have to find a way of economically working with these acknowledgements, and you want to go to your peer groups and, thank them, and you want to connect with them. And specifically, as a German, not living in Los Angeles or in London, to go there and, be present. I think that's very important, that you don't go there just to collect a metal figure and then you go back home. It's important to also take care of that, what's going on in those cities or, in those groups. And so I'm trying really to be interested in the groups of composers and meet them and talk to them and also ask about their work. I mean, it's not all about me.
You mentioned before we started recording that you're collaborating with Ed Berger on a 6th film. Anything about that project that you can tell us, or maybe something about bold musical choices you might be experimenting with right now?
Well, I wouldn't tell you anything about, specific things of it, but it's a very, a wonderful film called The Ballad of a Small Player. I'm in a way in the same world as before Conclave and before All Quiet. I'm searching for, experimental instruments. I'm looking into sounds. The good news is that every time I find one, I buy it. And then I'm in a way, I'm having a kind of instrument museum, which I can always use. So at the moment I'm searching a lot and I learn a lot about other aspects of film music. I'm so excited about every day that life is a little too short.
So having worked on numerous different films with all kinds of different worlds and motifs, is there a world or motif that you haven't gotten to work in that you'd like an opportunity to explore?
I mean, honestly, I would love to work on this animation movie. That's a complete different approach in a way. I worked on one sci-fi movie so far, but sci-fi is always a very wonderful topic for a composer because you can dive into weird sounds and, sound worlds. So that is something I would maybe love to do a Western at some point, because the topic of the story and the genre in a way is something that I want to inhale, and then I'm doing it differently.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your take on a Western. I think that'd be wonderful. So we're almost out of time, but here on the season, we like to finish up with a quick lightning round of questions about award season. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What is your favorite award show to attend?
The Oscars.
What is your favorite film festival to attend?
Toronto. Toronto is a very wonderful city, and the kind of film enthusiasm that is in there is so amazing that every time I'm there, I'm just feeling, I'm in a kind of ongoing concert in a way with films. And I love that so much.
Do you have a post-award season ritual?
Well, I try to disconnect from everything that has to do with awards. to have no interviews.
Right.
Maybe going into the forest. I'm taking care of my health, running, being with a family. Family is also a part of the award season. So we're celebrating and doing a lot of travels together. But at the same time, the disconnection is very important.
What is your favorite past appetizer at a screening reception?
Oh man. These appetizers are so, there's so much food delivered that I sometimes even don't know what I'm eating. But I would say at the Golden Globes, for example, I really loved the sushi. And I'm a big sushi fan. So I really love that.
So you mentioned the Golden Globes. Do you prefer table seating or theater seating at an award show?
I think I like the theater seating first and then go to the table.
Do you have a least favorite awards speech cliche?
Yes, thank you. And then you walk off.
Do you get to watch many of the other films out on the circuit, and do you prefer to watch them in the theater or from the comfort of your own home?
Both. I would say I'm trying to watch as much as I can, wherever I have the chance. Because a lot of times you're in planes, you're in lobbies, you're waiting, you're in hotels. And so there's plenty of time where you can actually inform yourself about the work of others. And I think that's totally depending on if I have time to go into the cinema. Even when I'm at a festival, I'm trying to go to other films already because I know down the road I will have to watch them.
Sure.
And so I rather start already in summer.
All right. Final question. What is one award season prediction that you're willing to make? It does not have to be related to music at all.
That's very difficult for a nominee because,
Sure.
In a way, the predictions are so vague that I rather meet the winner on the evening. I think every time I was there, I had the feeling that it had a really amazing musical program, and I really love to be entertained, at least in the shows that I attended. It was something that I was very glad to be a part of the evening. The beginning, you don't know when you go there the first time. It can happen that you think like, oh, I don't like there to be there, just for my little spot, and then I'm off. But it's nice in a way to go there like you go into a theater piece, or So I'm what I can predict is that I get entertained.
That's great. Volker Bertelmann, thank you so much for being on the season.
Thank you for having me.
We're back, and I'm here with our FYCit field agent, Tony Miros. As always, Tony has been very busy attending every screening, gala, or shindig on the FYC beat. Tony, it's been a couple of weeks. How have you been?
It has been, but I've been trying to keep myself busy, as you said. I'm going to things that aren't even FYC, but they are so interesting. New York's filled with stuff, so I wasn't bored at all.
Safe to say New York has been a success for you this season?
It has, actually. For somebody who's never done FYC in New York, it gave it a totally different feel. I've been to these events now for, 6-7 weeks, and it's been it's been very different than LA. As I told you, in LA, there's like this whole sense of, oh, well, we're voting and we're going to, they're going to schmooze us. In New York, it's totally different. Like they're like so into whatever they're doing and then they leave. And it's not even, it's so quick. And I'm like, wow, okay, moving on.
A schmooze free zone.
Yeah. And then there are the schmoozing. And then you're like, oh, this is real schmoozing. You know what I mean? Like it's not it's not the phony schmoozing. It's like, oh, okay, we got real people here talking about stuff. So.
Yeah. So what'd you see?
Okay, well, I always do this, Ryland. I go see the films twice because I need to know if I really like them or not. Because I see them the first time and it's kind of like, okay, I'm getting the story, I'm getting all that, and I'm missing all the nuances. So I'm seeing them again when I can. I got to see A Real Pain again at the 500 Park Avenue screening room, which now is like my home. I think I've been there like 6 times already. I've forgotten how good Kieran Culkin is in that role and how well the script is. So I'm glad that I'm going back because, I was like, oh, that was cute or that was fun or I enjoyed that. And then I forget because there's so much going on that now I could catch up. So I thought that was really interesting. And I also did September 5th again, which I really liked the first time. But this time around, I got to look at all the nuances that Peter Sarsgaard had said during his Q&A on the last time I'd seen that. And, how they tried to keep it very 1972, all the stuff that they had on the set and the way they were doing all the dials on the board, when they were going from the television screen and I was paying attention to all that. So I was like, oh, okay, now I can see all the detail that he was talking about because at first I'm just watching the movie like anybody else. I didn't have a lot of info about it.
Yeah, so much detail in that movie and glad to see that it's getting at least some recognition. I
I'm happy with it. I really enjoyed that film. Then I tried to catch up on the things that I had not seen. So I went over to the Cinema 123 on 3rd Avenue, right across the street from Bloomingdale's. Great location, by the way, to go see I'm Still Here, which I had heard a lot about. I saw her win the Golden Globe Awards, Fernanda Torres. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take this afternoon and I'm going to go to this film and I'm going to go see this Brazilian Portuguese subtitled movie and I'm going to enjoy it. And I actually did. I was surprised. This theater in particular, this is where people on the east side of New York go see their films. So, and they had concessions. So I had my popcorn. I was ready to go. But I was really interested. The thing I just kept coming back to was she is such a great actress in tiny ways. It's not that over the top where it's crying on command, hysterics. The minimal little things that she brought to that role really stood out to me. So about the end of the film, I was like, I get it. Now I see why everybody's talking about this film.
Yeah, I'm very sorry to admit that is still the movie that I have not made it to see, but I'm committed to seeing it before the Oscars for sure.
I can tell you, if you get the opportunity to see it before Oscar night, you totally should because her performance alone is worth the watch. But here's the thing. Like, people kept saying to me, is she going to win the Oscar? I said, well, I don't know because everybody keeps talking about Demi Moore's performance. So next week, that's the film I have to go see. I have not seen it yet. I keep putting it off. But anyway, yeah, I have to see The Substance.
Anything else you got up to?
I went to go see Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story documentary about Liza Minnelli. I know that sounds crazy, but it was great. It was at the IFC Center in the West Village, which used to be the historic Waverly Theater, which I remember from when I was a teenager here in New York. We used to go see Rocky Horror Picture Show there every midnight. Anyway, so now it is the ultimate place for New Yorkers to see independent film. And that particular night was the opening night of the documentary, and they had a Q&A with the director afterwards. And I got to tell you, when you think you know somebody's life and you get surprised by seeing the documentary about their life while they're still alive, that's a lot to be said because this woman's life has been exposed since she was a kid. Well, the thing about this is that's different, just so you know, is it doesn't start from she was born at this day and this is what happened. No, it happens right after the death of her mother. And it makes sense why they did it because they wanted to discover how Liza became Liza. Before her mother died, it was all about her being Judy Garland's daughter. But after, think about it, about 5 years after her mother died, she wins the Academy Award. She wins a Tony. She really becomes who she is. So I learned so much about Liza that I didn't know, and I really thought I was an expert. So, okay, I really enjoyed that documentary.
To me, she'll always just be Buster's girlfriend on Arrested Development. As someone who knows absolutely nothing about musicals, that is my Liza Minnelli connection.
Well, I'm glad you know a little bit about her, Ryland. That's good to know. And the last thing I went to go see was The Brutalist because people kept saying, you got to see this, you got to see it. Okay. So I went to the AMC Lincoln Square. I don't know if you've ever been to this AMC, but it's huge.
I have,
There's
yeah.
13 movie screens inside. It's 3 floors on a New York high rise. Okay. They had fake palm trees and old movie theater entrances to each of the screening rooms. Very comfy, loungy seats. I loved it. So yes, I ventured over to the AMC Lincoln Square, went to go see The Brutalist. My God, was that a long movie? Wow. Wow. I was so happy when the 15-minute intermission came. I literally flew out of my chair. Everybody did. The whole audience got up and went to the restrooms. But I can see why he won. He's fantastic. Adrian Brody's, but that is a one long film. I don't know what is wrong with these directors. Do they not let editors do their job? Maybe it's just me, but it's a little excessive.
Yeah, well, it's looking like the favorite or the co-favorite for Best Picture. So at least you got a chance to see it on the big screen.
Absolutely. I got to do it and I'm happy that I did. But wow, I needed that 15-minute intermission.
So I did know that about the AMC Lincoln Square because I was visiting New York many, many years ago and got a call from a publicist friend of mine. And she said, I've got an open seat for the pre-release screening of Batman Begins, the first Christopher Nolan Batman.
Oh, wow.
Can you get to Lincoln Center in the next 20 minutes? I was like, I don't know. I'm in Soho. How do I get there? Jumped in a cab, made it up there, saw that movie before everyone else, and was pretty happy to have that experience.
There you go. Well, now we know to go to the AMC Lincoln Square if you need to see something.
So, Tony, looking at my calendar here, it looks like the Artios Awards are next Wednesday. And I seem to remember one of us was nominated for 2 Artios Awards. I think it was you.
Yes. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Are you coming back out to LA for this?
I am. I'm flying on Sunday. I will be there to the awards. They're having a pre-cocktail awards thing 2 days before and a luncheon. So it's going to be fun to be back in LA. I'm going to see my old friends. I'm going to have a good time. So I'll report all about my experience being a nominee for 2 separate categories. I'm not competing against myself.
How are you feeling? Do you feel like you have a chance, or are you just it's an honor just to be nominated?
You know what? And I know that sounds corny, but it is an honor to be nominated. And I'm really not thinking about winning at all because this was a total surprise. You know, people are like, "Oh, I was campaigning." I didn't even know this was happening. People were congratulating me. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I'm going to go and enjoy the night. I have a new outfit. That's the excuse. Oh, I can go shopping. There's the excuse.
Well, we wish you safe travels and the very best of luck at the awards.
Thank you, Ryland.
Thank you so much to our FYCit field agent, Tony Miros. Very best of luck at the Artios next week. And thanks to Volker Bertelmann for the insightful conversation. We'd love to hear what you think of the season. You can leave us a review on your podcast app or drop us a line at podcast@fycit.app. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell a friend. And don't forget to follow us on social media at FYCit app. You can also visit fycit.app to sign up for our newsletter, download the FYCit app, and stay up to date on everything happening this award season. Join us again next week for another episode of The Season as we dive deeper into the stories behind the awards. Until then, remember, at FYCit, award season starts here.